hey ya yo, 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 hawe ya, hawa ya ne, ho ya ne, hawe ya, hawa ya ne, ho ya ne, we. Ganewa hoyane, Yaho ganewa hoyane, Yaho ganewa hoyane, Yaho ganewa hoyane, weha, he anu hawe. No ya hey hey no hey ya, 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 no ya hey hey no hey ya. No ya hey we ha we ya na we ya na we ya na we ya na oh ya ne we ya na we ya na we ya na oh ya ne we ha yo ho he ho 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 e do ga ho ne ho yo
Otio sonoyo sta ele chilugi oginale ele nagida che Tsalagi ane Gaduwa Chickamauga ele che mashu ugidale unega. Hello and good night and welcome to everybody, to all of our friends and family. I am Cherokee, Chickamauga, and Osage, and my name is Mashu Whitefeather. I'm one of your hosts tonight, and I'd like to say right off the bat that our opening song, again, is by Bo Taylor on his album, Rebuilding the Fire, and that is an album that he has done that's bringing back all of our social dances of our Cherokee people, and the song you heard was a welcoming song of our Tsalagi Cherokee people. Our other host is with us also, Doreen Bennett from Atihaunui. And Doreen, you have our guest with us for this evening, and say hello.
Kia ora, Mashu, and tēnā koutou katoa to our team, Jimmy, Sheila, and of course you, Mashu, and to everyone listening today. I'm here in Wellington, Aotearoa, New Zealand, and our guest today is Carl Hutchby. And I'll just do a little build-up for Carl because he's quite nervous sitting next to me, just to make him worse. Carl is, at the moment, he's CEO of Paparangi, a NGO, mental health, addiction and health provider here in Lower Hutt. He's also a member on the board of the IITC, and I'll let Carl explain that in a little bit more detail. And the reason we've asked him to be a part of today's show is Mashu and I will be in the UN in 2 or 3 weeks. And Carl, of course, is a bit of an old hand at it. He's been there before, and he'll show us the ropes over there. But we did want to have someone that has had that experience talk about the UN and what we'll be doing over there. So I'll just hand it over to Carl to introduce himself.
Cool. Tēnei te mihi ki a koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou, ngā whānau o te ao. So that is greetings and blessings from Aotearoa, New Zealand, to our Indigenous brothers and sisters that are tuned in. And it's a great honour and a pleasure to be part of this radio show. Yes, and as Doreen was mentioning, they're going to question me around my role that I've played in the UN, albeit a very small role, and also the privilege and the role that I have to be part of the, as Doreen was saying, the IITC, which is the International Indian Treaty Council, with its head office in San Francisco and a base office in New York, across the road from the United Nations in New York. So I've got the honour, I suppose, of being an alternate board member of that organisation, which has been going for a great number of years, and was, as I understand it, set up to ensure that the Indigenous voice from around the world was heard at the United Nations.
Kia ora, Carl.
Do I keep going?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So, excuse me, I'm a bit nervous, as Doreen was saying. So, part of how I came to be as part of the United Nations was I have a very dear friend who Mashu and Doreen both know and have met, and her name is Whanganui Morgan. She is of Kahungunu, so she's from the tribe of Kahungunu, and I've had the pleasure of working with her about probably on and off for over 10 years now, and Whanganui has been working at the UN for many years, at the grassroots level, as she likes to say, and that's working with a lot of Indigenous people throughout the Pacific, throughout the Americas, and North and South America, Canada included, or Kanakota. And her role has been in there to ensure that grassroots people understand the mechanisms of the United Nations and how it works, because as you would understand, it's a huge machine. And she has done a lot of grassroots work and on different levels, and she's also a board member of the International Indian Treaty Council, as well as a board member of numerous other organisations. And so a couple of years ago, she approached me when we were doing a workshop together and said that she would like to kind of semi-retire, and would I be interested in taking her place on the board of the International Indian Treaty Council. So, of course, I jumped at it. And as a result, I went over to the United Nations last year and around this time, and did training with the IITC. And what the training did, which both Mashu and Doreen will be attending this year as well, is it gives you an overview of what United Nations is all about, and how we as Indigenous people can get our voice heard at the United Nations, and also how we ensure that there is follow-up from what we do, and working very closely with the, what do they call it, our rights of, the rights of Indigenous peoples, which all state members have signed off, and I think New Zealand, Australia and America were the last 3 countries to sign off on. So ensuring that our voice is heard at the United Nations, and ensuring that when we do put written documentation into the United Nations, that it's correct in the format that they use and all of the levels that we need to go through. As I was saying, it's a huge machine, and if you don't amend it, your voice is just lost, basically. Yep. Yeah.
So
Carl,
this year,
since you've been working with the UN, and I know it's been probably about a year since you've really been active with that, am I correct?
Yes, you're right, Mashu. It's been a year that I've been active, but all up I've probably been working on and off with the UN, with Whanganui and various other people here in Aotearoa and over in America, but not at the level I'm working at now. So I've always had an interest in the UN because I understand that is an amazing, albeit very political, it's an amazing venue and avenue for Indigenous people to be heard. I know there's a lot of Indigenous people that feel that the United Nations isn't somewhere where we can put our voice, but it is definitely a vehicle where we can put our voice, and as each state has signed up to the various agreements at the UN, it just gives us more avenues, more push, more vehicles to ensure that our voice is constantly heard by all states.
Okay, and that's good, and that's wonderful. What I'm curious of, because we have some of our peoples, and I'm sure you've heard this too, that are all for us being a part of the Indigenous International Permanent Forum for Indigenous Peoples. And then there's also some people that really don't understand the benefit of this. I know, well, I shouldn't say I know, but I feel that it's a definite benefit, and that the UN has been present, let's say in Canada, during the Idle No More, with the atrocities that Prime Minister Stephen Harper has been doing to the Indigenous people north of the border here on Turtle Island. And I've always been told that the UN cannot really do anything like say, okay, as the UN, we say that you have to do this and you have to do this. The only thing that the UN can do is to recommend. And it's my view that the recommendation is important because it's coming from an international level, and I think at some point it does have an effect on what's happening with Indigenous people in whatever situation that it's being addressed. What are your feelings on that?
Yes, you are quite right. Even here in New Zealand, as you're aware, Mashu, with the conversations we've had, we have Māori who think that the UN is a waste of time, but we also have people that, and what I would say to that is the people that say it's a waste of time are probably people that don't understand the mechanism, the layers, the bureaucracy of the UN. Now, it is a huge machine, but if you understand the United Nations, it absolutely can work for our people. It just the problem that people see with it is that it does take a long time, but it is definitely because all of the states have now signed up to the rights of Indigenous peoples, which is for anyone can go online and have a look at that, and it is very clear under those under the rights what we have rights for, and it usually targets our health, our culture, our lands, or our whenua, all of those issues that are very, very dear to us as Indigenous people. It covers all of those things, and one of the most important things that is in there is the right to free and informed consent. What that means is that, for example, if you look at what happens with extractive industries, particularly down in South America and that, so what they do is they'll go down there and go and talk to one of the head clan people or one of the chiefs down there, and dare I say it, but I will, they give them a bribe. So if you're coming from a very poor community, and then all of a sudden this big corporation comes in and says, right, I can give you $1,000, which is huge money to them, but in the big scheme of things, it's just, not even worth 1 cent. So what they do is these multinationals divide the community. You have those that don't want the extractive industries in there, and those that say we do need it because it creates employment and all of that sort of stuff. What the Code of Rights on Indigenous Peoples does is that it doesn't matter when the people that are coming in make an agreement that there's free, prior and informed consent that must be done continuously throughout the process. So as Indigenous people, we can go, yes, we want this in here, yes, we agree to your terms, but then what the rights set out is that 3, 6, 9, 12 months down the track, they have to come back and ensure that the Indigenous people are still for the extractive industry or whatever industry it is. They still give them a consent to be there, because as you would understand, Mashu, quite often people will say yes to them coming in because they sell it really well, the big industries, lots of money, lots of employment. But reality is there is very little money that comes back to the communities, and there is very little employment that comes back to the communities. So under the Code of Rights, they can then go back and say no. But if people don't understand that, then that's where it falls down, and that's where people get quite frustrated with it. So long-winded answer there, but what will happen when you and Doreen come over is when we have what they call, you'll go through the training, and then we have the World Indigenous Caucus group, and that's where you see a lot of Indigenous people will come in and start putting their issues on the table. And that's not the right place to do it, because they haven't been through the training, they don't understand the system and all that. And it's very frustrating for people like me, because you think, the issues that they have are very real and need to be heard, but they don't know where to give it. And that's what the IITC does, is it trains Indigenous people from the 6 regions, because they bring in people constantly every year. And then it's our job to then go back out to our communities and train them up, so that when there's anything that they need to do to get a voice in the UN, they know the process. That was a long-winded answer, Mash.
No, that's a very good answer. One of the things that I noticed, and that I hadn't seen, I had heard of it, but I hadn't actually seen it printed out, and I saw that when I was in Aotearoa last year, was the United Nations Bill of Indigenous Rights.
That's it, yes. Sorry, that's what I was talking about.
These are the rights that are guaranteed all Indigenous people of the world by the United Nations, and I was quite impressed with that, and I now carry it with me everywhere I go. Should I need them, I'll have them for a quick reference.
Yeah.
But
it's like anything, Mash. Oh, sorry, go.
No, go ahead.
Oh, it's like anything, and as you said, Masha, you carry it with you. So I do the same thing. I have that printed off, and I've got booklets all around the organisation that I'm the CEO for. I will give it to other people, so that the more people that understand that we do have a Code of Rights and that every state in the world has signed off to it, albeit some fairly equally and some with conditions, those are our rights. And every time, it's like any document, unless it's used, we continuously refer back to it within our discussions with our own governments, with our discussions with other governments, with departments within governments. Unless we constantly refer back to it, it's not going to have a lot of teeth. So that's what I feel that I need to do over here, is to ensure that everyone knows that there is this wonderful booklet out there. And what you would have noticed, Masha, it's written in very plain English, or it's written in a lot of different languages, but it's nice and simple. It's not It's not wordy. It's very easy for people to understand. And so what I'm saying is we need to get that out there more and more, because it only will have the strength that it will have if we utilise it. And that's only one tool in the youth.
The one that I have is not only in English, very simply worded, but it's also in the Maori language, because I got it from Aotearoa. So that's good. I think that's good. I know here, we have here in the States a thing called Indigenous Religious Freedoms Act, American Indian Indigenous Religious Freedoms Act, that a lot of us were carrying around, and it states, that we have the right to carry our eagle feathers, and for ceremonial uses, and it goes into a list of things, and some of our people have been stopped, and that document has held up because it doesn't say, it just says, as Indigenous people, we have that right. If you're stopped, they say, well, that's only if you're a federally recognized tribe as opposed to a state-recognized tribe. So even though the intention of that document was to protect our people, they didn't print everything in that document, and so there are people who are being stopped for that, and this is one thing that the United Nations has put out in this Bill of Rights, is everything is very plain and simple, and it's explained very well that the people can rely on.
Well, Masha, you and I and Doreen have had many conversations regarding the federally recognised system that Turtle Island has. You know my thoughts on that, as in I just think it needs to be thrown out completely. And our conversation, we talked about that they tried to bring that here into Aotearoa, New Zealand, back in I can't even remember when, but from time to time that's reared its ugly head, and we just do not even go near it. Because as far as my thoughts on that issue are, if you have been brought up Māori, Cherokee, Pacific Islander, then that is who you are. No government should tell you who you are because of the amount of blood that you have in you. It is up to your tribe, your hapu, that's your wider family, your family first, your hapu, that's your extended family, your tribe, your iwi, to tell you whether you are Cherokee, whether you are Māori or whatever. I don't believe that it's up to any governments to tell us that, and we just not adhere to that over here, and we will never adhere to that.
And I guess, Mashu, that the importance for the individual or for the family is knowing your ancestry.
Yeah.
That's what makes us who we are as Indigenous people. And I think I've talked to you before about Native Americans and Indigenous Americans. The difference, and you've actually explained that really well. Like, it's our ancestry that makes us Indigenous.
Yes.
It's just that, isn't it, Mark?
Well, see, the thing is those are terms that are deemed politically correct. Before, for years, we were always called American Indians. And then the government decided that was not good, so the new politically correct term was Native Americans, which was fine up until I became a Native American student advisor at a technical college in Wisconsin, and they changed it from American Indians to Native Americans. And I closed out one semester, and when I came back for the next semester for the enrollment, my Native population had grown 5 times greater. And so it was my job to call all of these people to find out which tribe they were from. And most of the people were saying, well, we're not Indian. We are Native American because we're born here. So and they were right in every sense of the word. So I went back to the Dean University and I said, okay, this is the choice. You either change it back to American Indian because our people are comfortable with that term. We know who you're talking about, or we can change it to Indigenous American, because Indigenous says it all. We came from no place else. This is our place of origin, and this is who we are. Well, then the government in the United States decided that it was there was a better politically correct term, which they stole from Canada, and that's First Nations people. Well, that to me also still insinuates that we came from someplace else and they're trying to steal our birthright from us, which makes it easier for the colonizing force that's in our country to take it over without much guilt, because, like, well, they were here first, but we're here now. You know, that whole manifest destiny thing. And so again, I have stuck by the term Indigenous American, and that has really caught on, and I find more and more people are using that term because it's a short term, it's one you can remember, and it says it all. There's not a whole lot of verbiage that needs to go with that to explain that.
Yeah. That's the term, well, I'm sure they still do, that they use in Australia for Aboriginal people is Indigenous Peoples as well. And I think it's very similar to the reasons that you've given, is because, you know, when the government does come up with these various ways to describe us, there's always kind of loopholes in there, and other people can kind of jump on that bandwagon. But then that's the Westminster system, isn't it? It's a system that constantly moves the goalposts. So the minute you have worked out where you fit in the different policies of the governments, they either change government or change the policy, and then the goalposts are moved again. But I do believe with the United Nations and the Bill of Rights that are there, if we as Indigenous people continuously refer back to it, because it is written in very plain English or in the language of the various Indigenous peoples, and we hold on to it, then, as I would say, we give that document mana, we give it strength, we give it purpose, we give it a reason, and if you do that enough, then the government, because they have signed it, and, you know, that's not to say that they've signed a whole lot of other documents as well, but it's much harder to undo that document because it has been signed off by every state that's part of the United Nations, and that would mean to overturn it that every nation would have to vote against it, and I can't see that happening. So it's kind of up to people to give it strength.
One of the things I'd like to clarify on something that you brought up, and I'm so proud of New Zealand for doing this. One of the things that was started here on Turtle Island is what we call the blood quantum. And this is something that the United States government devised in order to get all of our land, because they figured after so many generations and after the genocide of our people, there wouldn't be any of us left, and then they would have a free-for-all for all the land. Well, that kind of backfired. But what it did do, that along with Christianity, has done a number on dividing and what they think is conquering our people. And our people bought into this blood quantum nonsense so much that we're actually today fighting against each other with stupid little stuff like, well, I'm more Indian than you are. Now, the thing that I'm proud about Maori for is that this was attempted in New Zealand, and if I'm correct, it was like they were asking for blood quantums on your income tax forms or something like that. I think that's the story that I heard. And your people just said, the heck with that. We're not even going to be bothered with that. And so it failed. I wish our people had common sense to do that here. But I'm so proud of your people for doing that and standing up in such a quiet way.
Yeah. Thank you for that acknowledgement, Mashu. And yes, you're quite correct. And it goes back to what I was saying before. You know, it's up to our our whānau, our families, up to our hapu, our wider families, and up to our iwi, and ourselves as individuals, to know whether you are Māori or you aren't, you know. And you are correct, it came out in what we call the census, which comes out every 5 years, I think, over here. We threw that out, completely threw that out, and the other thing we threw out, because we thought it was a lot of nonsense, was paying for our TV licenses. So we look at it in that vein. It was like, oh, this is the same as the bloody TV license. Throw it out. But the thing that happened over here too wasn't just that Māori threw it out, it was New Zealand threw it out. And so, you know, we make up about 10 to 12 or maybe 15% of the population, but New Zealand threw it out as well. It's like, you know, so that's all the Pākehā people, basically. No.
But did they more or less have to? Because, you know, our people have always been like your people until European migration took over here, and is that if one of your parents was indigenous and you married a non-indigenous, the children were always indigenous until this blood quantum thing came out, and then that's when it started to do that. But the Maori way of doing things is really good. You're absorbing the white people by marrying them in, so eventually they're all going to be Maori. I think that's wonderful.
Oh yeah, I mean there is one would argue there could be a bit of a dilution to our blood quantum, maybe, in doing that. But I think it's about Indigenous cultures, isn't it? We don't kind of look at whether whether you've got Chinese or whether you've got different other bloods in you. If you've been brought up in that family or in that grouping, then you are who you are with that. So and I think all Indigenous peoples around the world did that. It's really interesting though, isn't it? It comes back to that genocide. So you know, one thing I can't get my head around, Mashu, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, and I think I've discussed this with you before. So if I was full-blood Tsalagi, Cherokee, and I married a what's another tribe, Doreen? What's another tribe, Mashu?
An Apache.
An Apache. So I'm Tsalagi and I marry an Apache, if that's allowed in the culture over there. Our child that we produce would be half under the blood quantum, would have half Cherokee blood. This is to say that we're both full Cherokee and Apache, and the other half would be there. So where does that leave that child? Does that mean that child, because it only has 50% of that blood and 50% of that blood becomes a non-Indian or a non-Native American?
Not at all. But it does legally produce some problems, and I ran into this as counselor at a college. The thing is that most of our tribes here are either matrilineal or patrilineal, and if you have a matrilineal Indigenous person marrying a patrilineal Indigenous person, then it's decided on that family which tribe these children would be enrolled in. That doesn't mean that they're any less of the other tribe, but legally, in today's United States, they would have to pick a tribe. Now, I've had students come in through college I was in that was like a quarter Lakota, no, let's say an eighth Lakota, a quarter Seminole, and then Cherokee, and then let's say Paiute. They have like about 5 different tribes in their makeup, but they do not qualify for any federal or indigenous funding for school because they are not enough blood quantum for any of the tribes, even though they're full-blood native. They're not enough quantum of any particular tribe to get the indigenous funding for their school, and this is the thing that is just wrong. It's just wrong for
that is wrong. Yeah, that is wrong, and I think what we need to do, I think Doreen's going to bring in Two Dogs, but I think what we need to do as Indigenous people is firstly we have to kind of look at decolonising ourselves because you guys have had, we're babies when it comes to the colonisation process here in Aotearoa. You got, in America, had a whole lot, in Turtle Island, you've had a whole lot more years of colonisation. But part of that process is, what they do is they take away our culture, and we need to get back to the basis of what our culture is, and then these decisions, we wouldn't be talking about them. It would be taken care of in our different tikanga, that's what we call it here in New Zealand. It would totally be taken care of by that, and we'd be just going, oh, that's just nonsensical, that's just stupidness. But anyway, I believe someone's going to be introduced in.
We've just got Charles waiting. So, kia ora, Two Dog. Would you like to comment on this topic?
Kia ora no seo, guys. One of the things I could tell you about one native individual that I used to do a lot of radio with over in Lakota territory is that his father is, I think, full-blooded Lakota, and his mother is full-blood Nakota. And they have him down as only a half Indian.
And the sad thing about that is that the Lakota, the Nakota, and the Dakota all make up what people call in English, the Sioux tribe. But those are the three linguistic groups of the Sioux people. But most people don't use that term. They don't use the word Sioux. Indigenous people don't. They'll group them all as Lakota. But their linguistic group, they have three linguistic groups, the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota. So he's basically full blood, but he's only being counted as half, right, Cuz?
Yeah. Right, Cuz. So basically he is a full blood, but they got him down as only half.
Before we go any further in this conversation, I would like to just put our call-in number in case anybody wants to call in, on what we're discussing tonight. It's area code 718-506-1564. Again, that's area code 718-506-1564. Sorry for the interruption there, guys. Please continue.
So given that scenario, the Lakota, Nakota, and Dakota, so if you take me, for example, I am Atihaunui Paparangi, that's a tribe in around Whanganui. I'm also Ngāpui, which I believe Mashu has connections to, and I'm also Whanau Apanui. So there's three tribes here in New Zealand. So what happens with me is when I go to Ngāpui, I am Ngāpui. When I go to Whanau Apanui, I am Whanau Apanui. When I go to Whanganui, I am Whanganui. So I always affiliate mostly to Whanganui because that's where I was brought up. But those three tribes are part of me, and first and foremost, I am Māori, who has affiliations to three tribes, and I dare anyone to say that I am not Māori with those, you know what I mean? Under the blood quantum, I wouldn't be Māori, would I? You know what I mean? I would be a third of each one of those bloods, but not enough to bring me up to the 60% of the blood quantum. And that's the silliness of it, because first and foremost, I am Māori, although I must say that the word Māori is not our word. It is actually an English word, but we've adopted it. But no government here would even dare to tackle an issue like that, because first and foremost, I am Carl Hutchby with three different iwis or tribes, and each iwi and each tribe is part of me, and that's the end of the story.
But the difference here, Carl, on Turtle Island, is number one, unlike Aotearoa, New Zealand, every tribe here has a completely different culture, a completely different language, a completely different set of traditions. There are basics and similarities, but there are even more differences. You know, so here, unlike New Zealand, where even though you all have different tribes, you still have a common language with different dialects and a common upbringing. You know, where that's more acceptable. Here, it's like you're going to a completely different. Well, we say, like where my people are, we say it's Cherokee country. You go out on the plains, a certain part, well, that's Lakota country, or that's Cheyenne country, or that's Arapaho country. That's the way our indigenous people talk amongst ourselves, because we recognize the traditional territories. That doesn't make you any less indigenous, and I agree with you. That's the way it should be. That's the way it was prior to European migration and the greed of the European migrants that came here and trying to get our land, because they felt it was their God-given right, because we weren't Christian, and because we didn't believe the way they did. We were considered to be soulless human beings, or soulless beings. We weren't even considered human.
No, thank you, Mashu. Can I ask a question then? And I don't know who would answer this one, whether it be you two dogs or Mashu. So given the scenario that you gave, the Lakota, the Nakota, and the Dakota, when that person was in those various tribal areas, would they, so if they went to Lakota, they would be Lakota, or would they be Lakota with a bit of Nakota and Dakota? You know what I'm saying? Would they be treated tribal members?
Basically, Carl, basically what I think, Carl, is with the Lakota, Nakota, Dakota, it's basically same language, just a little bit of a little bit different in maybe one part of like Dakota, but basic same language. There's 7 bands of the Lakota people anyway.
Yeah.
But what they're saying,
amongst
they wouldn't be treated any different.
Yeah, they wouldn't be treated any different. It's just by the United States government and their blood quantum nonsense.
Well, it's like this, Carl. I'm a Eastern Band Cherokee as far as Tsalagi. That's all my mom. And I am Mohawk from my father in New York.
Yeah.
There's a little bit difference in language, like Oseo in the Eastern Band and Sagaliskanago is the Mohawk.
Yeah.
And the
so
Mohawk
there's a difference in language also.
Yeah.
Go ahead, cuz.
But I mean, so really, we have to ask ourselves as Indigenous people, do we feel that this is right? And I would suspect the answer would be no. Those that would say yes, the blood quantum is correct, I think they need to go and join up with somebody else. I'll try and be polite. But I think, coming back to the United Nations, those are areas that we can use to take our governments, or our states as they call it at the United Nations, to task and just say that this is against this, this is against our Indigenous rights on this level, this level, this level. I haven't got the book in front of me, sorry, so I can't quote it. But we all have to start doing that and coming together as Indigenous people around the world to support each other, to just show how stupid this is, and that's the beauty of the United Nations. Okay, yes, it doesn't work overnight, and it did take about 20 years or so to get this Bill of Rights through, but the point is it got through, and it is an avenue and a vehicle that we can use to get other measures through, but it won't happen unless our voice is one and our voice is loud.
See, the thing that's happening here, Carl, the thing that's happening here on Turtle Island is, and this has been going on since this blood quantum nonsense was put on our people. You'll have people that will go to, from different tribes, will go to what we call a powwow. And a powwow is a gathering of all tribes that come together to trade, to barter, to dance, Some families have certain ceremonies that are done at these powwows. There's different contests that go on a lot of times, like competitive things like, let's say, tomahawk throwing or archery or blowgun throwing or whatever. A lot of things that the people gather for, and you sometimes see friends and family that you haven't seen for years. And these are where a lot of alliances and new friendships are made. Okay, what's happening is that when people from other tribes come, they'll come, let's say, to a powwow. And what's happening at some of the powwows is that they'll say, well, do you have a tribal card? And if you don't have a tribal card, that's a federally recognized tribal card, as opposed to a state recognized card, they will look down upon you and they say, well, you can't take part in this. Or you have to go over here and stay with these people over here because what it's basically saying is that we're not recognizing you, even though they're the same tribe, we're not recognizing you as part of our people. And that's absolutely wrong because our own people are being turned away from tradition, culture, and language. And these are things that are a birthright for Indigenous people. And this is why I feel so strongly this has to stop in this country.
Yeah, I agree, Mashu. Two things that I would say to that is colonization process is alive and well, and the other thing is paper genocide. So the sad thing is, and here in Aotearoa too, we've done the same thing. We buy into what our government says, and that's because there's years of doctrinization and all of that sort of stuff. And as our old people pass on, a lot of knowledge is lost. I mean, similar things happen here. So what you get today, and Doreen and I have discussed this a lot, we talk about our hapu. So we say ngā pautama. Now, when we go back to Whanganui, and Doreen and I, and we're not old by any means, we mention ngā pautama, and our young people go, and so what's happened, no comment, what's happened is that our government has started to change our boundaries, and our young people, because the people in the NGOs are going, oh, look, we have to change our boundaries because if we don't change, we're not going to get any funding from the government. So what happens is that our old boundaries and our old names are being lost through paper genocide. So I and Doreen, we quite often talk about this, and we talk to, Doreen tells her kids, and I talk to anyone that will listen to me, is that the proper names for our areas, that they're not what it is today. These are the areas like Ngā Pautama, even Atihaunui Paparangi. That wasn't ever said when I was young, but now everyone that comes from Whanganui says that's the iwi. Well, it's not. So it comes back to paper genocide, colonisation, and we need to pull our socks up as Indigenous people and look at that and get real with ourselves and say, do we want this for our young, or do we want to make it right? Are we going to be part of the problem, or are we going to be part of the solution? I want to be part of the solution.
And Carl hit it on the head earlier, Mashu. He mentioned it was about dollars. It's about money.
Yeah.
Why the governments are doing this over here. If we affiliate to a tribe, that tribe gets the numbers to get funding.
Yeah.
But it also would mean that I can't affiliate to the other part of me or another tribe, because you can't double dip in funding. So a lot of it's about money at the end of the day.
And paper genocide, Masha. You and I have had lots of conversations around that.
Yes.
We just need to stop it.
The problems that we're talking about, is that we have to get our people back to the base of who we are. Hence, lead in to Two Feathers International Consultancy, which is that we have come up with to do exactly that. Correct?
Correct.
mashu.
I forgot mashu. I forgot to let everyone know that Carl is also part of Two Feathers International.
And very proud to be that. Very, very proud and honoured. Yeah.
And
but,
Doreen, would
you know what?
Like to expound on what we're doing with Two Feathers International Consultancy?
Yep. Doreen will talk about that, but just one other thing. The biggest, hardest road we've got in the issues that we're talking about, the blood quantum and all of those sorts of things, are our own people. And we need to get real about that. We need to do healing for ourselves. And until we are healed and we've got rid of all of the things and go back to the basis of our cultures, because we've all got amazing, beautiful cultures and we're all connected as Indigenous people, we will not be able to tackle this issue. So that's where we've got to, that's bigger, in my mind, that is a far huger job to do than it is to tackle our governments, in all honesty. But anyway, Doreen's going to talk about Two Feathers.
That's right. And I guess Two Feathers, like as we've talked about before on here, it's a group of us at the moment, of 5 of us, who have had the passion and drive to want to help our Indigenous people. And it has started with Cherokee people and Māori people. That's a little bit about our foundation and where we started. And our desire to want to support our Indigenous people to get back to our traditions, our practices, our beliefs, our language. And that's what we see as the base of building us, strengthening us as individuals, as families, as sub-tribes and tribes, so that we can stand tall in today's world and have the answers for ourselves when we go up against the different states, how Carl was talking. So hopefully we'll get the opportunity to present something at the UN, because it's about returning to how we were, coming through the colonisation phase that happened to all our Indigenous peoples, bringing our people through that, bringing them out the other end with some knowledge and strength and tools to make a difference today, to get back to how we should be and get, I haven't got any of that stuff in front of me, but to get back to how we were and give us the strength today to move forward, because it's a different world today.
Exactly, but the key thing to that too, Doreen, is that, and you've already done a couple of programs with you and Carl over there, is that we take the individual and we start them right from the beginning, who they are as an individual in relationship to their family, to their hapu, to their iwi, and where they, as in your case as Maori, are, and where they fit in the scheme of things, which will give them a more sense of empowerment as an Indigenous person, which we're hoping will lead to them learning more about their traditions, learning their culture and language. And the programs that you have done already over there in Aotearoa, you've had a great response. It's been very successful from what I understand.
Yeah, that's right. And the other day and I'd like to thank you. I actually forgot at the beginning, thank Linda Thompson for being our guest last week. But Linda gave some really, really good feedback on the presentation, because the messages we're giving aren't new. These are what our old people, our ancestors have used. We've just reformatted it in a way that's fresh and new for the people today, which I thought was great feedback for us, because she says she could see the old messages in it, but we've presented it in a way that's inclusive, non-threatening, and solution-focused. Yeah. Because we're about looking for solutions. It's not so much about us talking about colonisation, and going on about that, because most of us know what happened and how devastating it was for our peoples. So just for our learning, I thought it was excellent feedback for us.
Yeah.
And we've shown it in a real sense because we've got, we've worked together, our people and Cherokee people. We've actually done some work together. So we're coming from a base of knowing.
The other thing is, Mashu, you were there in the presentation, don't forget, and you were a big star in the presentation. Probably bigger star than Doreen and I were presenting.
Be it to our people inside, but
yeah.
But you know, the good thing is too is that unlike, let's say, people in the past where we moan and groan about all the genocide and stuff, yes, it's important that we know that, and it's important that we never forget that because we never want it to happen again. But we're taking the things that have happened and we're turning them around to making positive solutions so we can grow from that and at the same time not lose anything of who we are as Indigenous individuals and Indigenous communities. So we're strengthening in both areas.
Yeah.
That's the way I like to.
One of the things that happened, I'll just quickly jump in, that happened last year when I was at the United Nations, and I was absolutely, I was brought to tears, I was just so proud, was this Indigenous Youth Caucus over as part of the United Nations, and they got up and did a presentation to the UN, and quoting a lot of the Indigenous rights, Bill of Rights, and what I saw and what I heard and what gave me great pleasure and warmth in my heart was that our young people are taking this up, our youth, and they're a people that is like, no, this is not right, and this is what you do need to do to change it. So they, like Doreen was saying before, they come up with not going and dwelling on, you know, this happened and that happened, because we all know it happened, but they've taken a focus of this is where we are and this is where we need to move to and this is how we're going to do it. And I was just like, oh my God, if I die tomorrow, I know our world for our youth is in good hands. That's how I felt. And they got a standing ovation. It was amazing to see. So that was quite heartwarming as well, to see our young people up there and fighting in a different way from you know, my age group. You know, we used to kind of bang the table and now we kind of fight with a pen and whatnot. But their approach is very different and very, very affirmative. It was fantastic to see. And you'll see that this time around.
That's wonderful to hear because I think, you know, our battles today are not on the battlefield because we would lose in a New York minute because of all the technology and the access the governments have against our weapons that we would even be able to come up with. So legally, our battlefields today are in the courts and on forums as the United Nations gives us to talk. And our biggest weapon, hopefully, is like something our Two Feathers International Consultancy can be the groundwork for getting our people back to basic Indigenous ways of thinking and decolonizing our people, where we have more of our people support of doing just that.
Yep, it's a big job ahead of us, but I'm up for it, and I'm sure Two Feathers is up for it. Yeah.
Oh.
Mashu, it must be getting close to a break. Would you like to the number out?
Our number for calling in is area code 718-506-1564. Again, that's area code 718-506-1564. And we are going to go for a break now. And when we come back, if you would like to call in and have any comments about anything that we're discussing, please feel free to call in.
Thank you.
Join us on Just Us Radio Network for our shows Inflowment, Unity in Community, Numbers in Time, the Indigenous Peoples Voice, One Point of View, Walking the Talk with Kurt, and the People's Round Table. Check out our website for information about upcoming shows. Just ask Google to find Just Us Radio Network, and you will find links to our website and to our Blog Talk and Facebook pages, as well as to our podcast, where you can subscribe for automatic downloads.
Welcome back. We're here with Indigenous Peoples Voice tonight with our guest, Carl Hutchby from Atihaunui. I'm Mashu Whitefeather with Doreen Bennett. We're the host of the show. And before we get started in probably another really good conversation, I'd like to repeat our call-in number, which is area code 718-506-1564. Again, that's 718-506-1564. And I'd also like to acknowledge our behind-the-scenes people that I forgot to do in the beginning of the show, and that's Chimmy Bennett. He's Western Band Cherokee. He's the one that's doing all of the hard work on the board, and you can, through our site of Just Us Radio Network, message in and comment there, and he will let us know no comments that's coming in. And then we have our producer, which is Sheila Folger. Go ahead, Doreen.
Okay, Matthew. And I'd also like to acknowledge Charles Two Dog, who hosts Welcome to the Heart Room. He's
Very
our tour, our big brother. Thank you for the support, Two Dog. Thank you very much. And welcome back to Carl. Welcome back to Carl, who's sitting with me here in Aotearoa. And I did want to touch on in this part what's going to happen at the UN, like some of the issues that they'll be talking about. And Carl got asked to do a side event, which is a presentation around cultural sustainability and a Māori perspective, from our perspective. So if you want to touch on that a little bit, Carl?
Oh, yes, certainly. Thank you, Doreen. So firstly, I would also like to acknowledge you two dogs as our tuakana, Mashu and Sheila and Jimmy. So great to have you guys here as well. So yes, I was approached, and this seems to be how we as Indigenous people roll. I was only going over to do some more learning and some more taking in of knowledge and everything, and then I got an email out of the blue saying, would I, as Doreen was saying, partake in a side event and do a presentation on cultural diversity and cultural sustainability from a Māori perspective, because immediately I straight away went to, we can do that, no problems, as in Two Feathers. So the International Indian Treaty Council, which Two Feathers is part of, knows that we're made up of Tsalagi and Māori. So Doreen and I are going to put together a little bit of a presentation. She doesn't kind of know it yet. I think she does in a way. So it will be about what kind of the things that we want to ensure as Māori that we do to create future development and sustainability for us as a people. And so the things that both Doreen and I have discussed around what we'll do with that is Kōwaio, which literally translates to who am I. So in order for this is a Māori belief, and it's also my belief, and I think it's probably an Indigenous belief as well. For you to kind of move forward in this world, you firstly need to know who you are, where you sit in this world, where you sit within your family. It goes right back to the basics. Where you sit within your family, where you sit within your hapu, which is your extended family, where you sit within your iwi, that's your tribe. And for any of us as Indigenous people to move forward, I think that's one of the key things that you need to know. Who am I? And touching on what Mashu was talking about with the presentation that Two Feathers did in the correction system over here, that's one of the key messages for our men that are inside, because they've kind of lost their way. They end up being taken up by the gangs over here or various different other places. So if you bring them back to who are you, where do you fit in this world, what's the basis of the culture, and we have kind of three things that we talk about: tika pono aroha, which is the basis to any decisions that we should make. So, and that's around honesty. Is it right? Is it the correct thing to do? So whenever you make a decision, you have to, as Indigenous people, you're making a decision not only for yourself, but for your family, for your hapu and for your iwi. And so you must ensure that you're upholding the mana, what is that, Doreen? Your strength of your people.
Your integrity.
Your integrity. So whenever a decision is made, it's not just you. You come, and this is what Indigenous people all over the world go with. You're actually going with the backing of your tupuna, your ancestors, those that have gone on into the spirit world. So when you make those decisions, they're actually sitting there with you, helping you make those decisions, because there's a basis to all of the decisions that we make are based in other cultures around those principles. And so does that answer that question, Doreen?
Yeah, it does. Because cultural sustainability, I think that's also the basis of Two Feathers.
Yes.
That's what we want to help achieve.
Yeah.
And for Māori people, and it's actually great that opportunities come about at the UN.
Absolutely.
Because it gives Mashu, I think you'll be over there then?
Yes.
Will you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so you'll see it from our perspective when we do the presentation. And you'll see where I'm coming from. I think sometimes when I'm talking with you, I'm talking with my Māori hat on. But also I know that I'm a part of the Indigenous whānau family.
And that's why I offered to come in full traditional Cherokee attire with my korowai, so we could see it.
Yeah, but you know why you can't do that.
Yeah. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us as Māori to put our worldview across. But you know, obviously in there we'll be having flavours of Two Feathers running through that, because it fits. It absolutely fits. So I think it is a wonderful opportunity, I think. But, yeah.
Well, you're saying you're doing it from a Maori perspective, but in actuality you're doing it from any Indigenous perspective, but with your Maori culture as basis. So it's going to be the same no matter which Indigenous group of people you belong to.
Absolutely.
And that's the important thing.
Yeah, because at the core,
about it, you understand.
Yeah, at the core of all us as Indigenous people, we all believe in core values. So, you know, we've all got names for Mother Earth. We've all got names for our forests, our rivers, our oceans. We've all got stories of the creation, and they are so similar that it's quite scary sometimes when you look at it. And I know that in the past we have all travelled and we've all met up. We didn't just do it when you know, Cook and what's his name that came over. The explorers, you know, they say that before that we didn't even know each other. Well, that's not true, because we know through our stories, through our old people's teachings, and that we all were connected up at one stage, us as Indigenous people.
But the difference between Maori and our Indigenous people here is that we always say in the beginning, and you all started with once upon a time. So.
You're right.
Well, it's like where Doreen and I come from. When you introduce yourself here in Aotearoa, you usually introduce yourself from your mountain, your river, your waka, your canoe, and all of that. So in Whanganui, from my hapu, we don't say waka because we believe that we were always there, and when we came to New Zealand, we came on the back of a bird. So we never came over in the migration. We were there prior to the migration, and we came over on one of those beautiful big eagles. So you apparently can see them in that movie.
The Blue Men, eh?
Yeah.
Avatar.
Jack
Let me expound on that just a minute here, now that you brought that up. New Zealand had largest eagles in the world called the Haas eagle, am I correct?
Yeah,
and they were big enough where people could ride them. The only downfall of the Haas eagle was that they could also be eaten, and the Maori people are a very hungry people. so they their most traditional form of transportation and use the feathers.
And honestly, Matthew, I don't think we would have eaten our resource. We would have eaten each other first, as Linda. Linda told Will last week.
Even worse. But that tells me that you do have a strong bird connection. So you all are, in my eyes, bird clan anyway.
Absolutely, yeah. But it's another interesting story when I'm talking about Hiniwirangi. She let Doreen and I know quite clearly, in a nice way, that we're actually the Pōtiki, which is the youngest of the colonisation process. And that Turtle Island is the tuakana in terms of that, because Columbus...
You just fed into his hand.
I know. Well, we've got to do that every now and again. So Columbus came to you guys about 500 years before he came to us. So she was quite clear that we kind of have to ensure that we take our place as the Pōtiki. But as you would know, in a family tree, the youngest is usually the loudest, and the youngest usually gets what it wants.
Go, Matthew.
Now, traditionally speaking, I'm sure you're talking from a colonized point of view, because traditionally speaking, they may be the loudest, but that's short-lived, and then they learn to listen so they can learn.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. No, it's interesting, and then, over the years, as we all would, we think, why do these things happen? Why do our people continuously kind of fall into the traps of the colonisers and all of that sort of thing? So I kind of look at it as they've got some really good strategies. I'm talking about the colonisers now. And one of their strategies is to constantly create chaos and divide. And we kind of haven't grasped that, I don't think, in a lot of ways. That, they are constantly, as I said before, moving our goalposts. So one minute they go, right, if you want this, then you've got to do A, B, C, and D. And then we start on A and we get to B and we do C and we're just about at D. And then they go, actually, no, we don't want D, we want Z. Or Z, as you say over there. So, and we're constantly running around trying to, I don't know, please them, or I don't know if that's the correct word. But in all of this, what happens is that we kind of lose who we are, and we end up battling on places that we shouldn't. We just need to stop, look at the situation, regroup, and call a lot of these stuff that they're doing to us nonsense and don't buy into it. Anyway.
I posted something today I found on Facebook, and it was on how to get indigenous government back. And there's actually courses it said, and it works for any tribe. And then after I posted it, I thought, oh, that's really good. Maybe this would be a good resource. And then one of the comments that I read later was that this was a thing put out by Harvard University, that it's coming from, again, possibly a colonized viewpoint. Because as I'm reading that title, I'm going, now is this from a traditional standpoint, or is this from a modern day viewpoint on how for tribal governments to be successful? And I think that's something that we have to be very cognizant of, because I realize that we live in a different world today, but at the same time, I as an individual feel that our traditional forms of government, where we have the equal representation from the individual on up by ancient traditional protocol, can be just as effective in today's world. And I think it's something that our indigenous people understand better. Yes, we can have subcommittees of the tribe in today's world that will, look to possible sustainability through business, through agriculture and stuff like that, and those kind of, we would have to go kind of through the colonized way as far as documentation, where the resources are coming from, how successful it is and stuff like that. But the core government of the people should be traditional in that way of functioning.
I agree. And if you look at all of the indigenous cultures around the world, we had all of those things. Like we had, if you do draw correlations, we had governments, we had government departments. We had hospitals, we had doctors, we had nurses, we had scientists. They just, when the colonizers came, they didn't recognize it, or maybe they did, I don't know, in their terminology and the way that they viewed the world. But we, and that's what I always instill in my nephews and nieces, that we did. We were scientists. We were navigators. We did have a government structure. We did have family structures. We had all of those things in place. And you knew as a person, if you needed this done or you needed that done, then you knew where to go to. It just, it was in a different format to what they have today. But you don't hear a lot of that in what they teach us in the schools around history. They teach us that we didn't have a society and we didn't have this. Well, we did, and we need to understand that we did, because we wouldn't have survived for eons if we didn't. And look at how many years, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years we've been here, and we never ever created pollution. Yes, we had our wars, we had our disputes, but they were dealt with in our way. But since the colonisation process, and I don't want to get down on non-Indigenous people either, because there are some good ones out there, we must recognise that. Since the colonisation process and the whole thrust around that, what you look at our Mother Earth now, we've got massive pollution going on. We've got that horrible fracking going on, which is upsetting the water tables, it's upsetting all sorts of things. We've got massive wars around the world. We've got massive disease around the world. Now, we never had any of that when Indigenous people were in charge. And those that are colonising now live tribally, because they did in Europe. They all lived in tribal boundaries and tribal areas. Yep, they had wars and they had fights and everything else, just like we all did in our own countries, but it never impacted on anyone other than the people that it was meant to impact on. And it certainly didn't impact on Mother Earth the way it is now, which is really disappointing and frightening.
I don't think that really getting down on non-Indigenous people. What we're discussing here is the processes of governing, which is colonization. But as far as a race of people, we're not doing that. We're talking more about the process and what has happened with that process. And as far as our governments, we had our own governments here on Turtle Island as well. And in fact, the government of the United States today was taken from our Iroquois Confederacy, of which our tribe belongs, our Iroquois people. We belong to the Iroquois Nation. And our elders say that they took the coals from our fire to start their own. And that was done by such men as Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin and on down the line, to build what is called supposedly a democracy in our country today.
Mashu, if I can, just for a second. The senator of Texas that stated that the Constitution was given to them by God. Well, number one, it wasn't by God; it was by the Iroquois Confederacy, and that's the basic deal. One of the things that I've understood to watching the American government in my time, America was built on murder and genocide completely.
Well, yes, and that's a very well-known fact. But the thing is, we know that that's happened. How can we get it to stop happening? Because it's still continuing today in all different forms, from paper genocide.
You're right.
On to, and paper
we got
genocide.
a thing here called pencil genocide, cousin.
It's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. Where you just they completely wiped out all indigenous people recognition and rights, water rights, land rights, treaty rights.
Right.
With just the signing of a paper. That's genocide.
And one other thing I would like to ask you, Mashu and Doreen, since you're going up there to the UN, and congratulations to you, Carl, and Doreen. Congratulations for going. I hold you in honor for that. One of the things that I'm trying to do for First Nations people over there in Kanakota is to try to find out where the missing women went.
Yeah.
And one of the persons that works for Stephen Harper stated to get rid of our Indian problem, we must go through the women. So I'm beginning to wonder where that came from.
Well, we know where they're going. They're going for through slave trade, and they're being hauled off on American ships, from what I'm told, in the harbors there, U.S. ships, for slave trade and sex trade, or they're being murdered. What has to be done is we have to find out exactly where that's taking place, and if the governments are aware of it, why aren't more things being done to stop it and to try to retrieve our women back? Because with us, everything in our culture, our Iroquois culture, goes through the women, and they're held in very high regard. So this is one thing that really needs to be looked into, and it would be wonderful if it was done on an international level, because I'm sure that they're being exported to countries around the world, and that's very much alive in Indian country.
There will be an opportunity, Mashu, to highlight that at the United Nations, and I think that's something that we kind of need to look at doing, and there's no reason that we can't. It's just around how you word it, and and there will be an opportunity, Two Dogs, for us to highlight that at the United Nations, and absolutely that sort of issue does need to be highlighted, because then they bring in what they call the rapporteurs, and the rapporteurs go into various different countries and indigenous communities and ask questions around different things, but they can only ask the questions around issues that community or the indigenous communities around the world have brought up. So absolutely, we must ensure that we bring that up at the United Nations, so that when the next lot of rapporteurs go around the different communities, they have a mandate to ask about that, and they will go to government, they will go to government departments, and they will go to communities to get the stories. That's how
I think the Harper government should actually answer to that.
Well, the current repertoire has been in Canada and has been going around, and that question was put to him. I have not heard their response yet from the current repertoire that was sent to Canada. But the other thing is, in doing so, these people have to be very careful on how they word things. They have to be very diplomatic in order to get a good, positive response and answers. And this is one thing we always have to be mindful of. You know, there's a right and a wrong way to ask questions and a right and a wrong way to get results.
That's why you're going and I'm not.
But it's still happening now, isn't it? It's still happening.
Oh, yes, and that's one of the
it's still happening.
Of what this idle more, you know, because this is one way that they feel that they can control, you know, what's happening. But the idle no more that started in Kanakota, which is the real name of Canada, has actually spilled into the United States now, with them trying to put that black snake across our country to the Gulf called the XKL or KXL pipeline. And so now our people are experiencing the same thing. And if you remember, I said exactly that at Ratanapa, that what affects one group of indigenous people will eventually affect us all. And those words are coming true here in Turtle Island for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
But I was just thinking, just with the missing woman, like, I guess, like, we need to find the answers to that, and the way to do that is ask the right questions. But are there tribes, the tribes in Canada, have they got strategies in place for the families, for the young women, the children, so that they keep themselves safe? Because it's going to continue unless we start looking after ourselves as a family, as a community.
Yeah, community.
Because it's still going to keep going, and there's nothing we can do about it until we find the cause. Yeah. But we can keep ourselves safe.
I think what needs to be done is that these young women should not be allowed out by themselves. They should go in groups and even like escorted. And I know that sounds very old-fashioned, and maybe a lot of young women today will say, well, what the heck is this? But if you're living in a tribal community, and especially in rural areas, maybe this is one way, you know, something that our dog soldiers would have done back in the day, our warrior societies, would be to protect. And so this is another tradition that maybe needs to be revived, you know, until this kind of nonsense stops.
That's cool.
You're absolutely right, Mashu. And I mean, in the old days, the elders or the what do you call them? The dog soldiers would have said, this is what's going to happen. So there was a problem, and then they would have come up with a strategy that might not have solved the problem, but a strategy to mitigate against what's happening. Yeah. But today, because we're kind of so far removed from different cultures, and a lot of our cultural values are not there anymore, who do our young women, our young men look up to and to keep themselves safe? Yeah. So it is getting back to that, you know, and that's you're absolutely right. You know, a lot of young people will go, well, who are you to tell me what to do? But it's not about that. It's about keeping the community safe.
And the other thing that goes along with it too is that we don't live in tribal communities like we did in the past. We have our people spread all over. There's people that are very urban now, living in the cities and not in a tribal community per se. A lot of the people that are urban nowadays do go back for ceremony and for different functions, you know, within the tribe, but they're out in the world. Our people are everywhere today. So in one respect, it's kind of hard, but for those people who are still living in tribal communities, you know, this is only one solution, and I'm sure there are many solutions. And even in big cities, like I lived in Chicago for a number of years. We had our American Indian Center. We had a population of 27,000 indigenous people living in Chicago from tribes all across the country. In situations like that, your population there could get together, even though it's intertribal, and work out some sort of a solution. You know.
Well, that's right. And I mean, sorry. The other thing is, you know, with our young people now, and not so young either, you've got all the social media things that happen. You know, it's about us getting savvy with how we connect with our communities. So, like, both Doreen and I are not living at home where our tribal areas are, but we know what's going on because of the different Facebook, not that I'm promoting Facebook, but the different Facebook groupings that we belong to. So I know what's happening in my Metis branch of my whānau, and we spread out all over the world, but we all come together on Facebook, and we're lucky on that page too, and on my own family one, our elders are on there as well, so they'll look at the conversations that are going on, and then what they do is come in and go, well, I think we need to do da-da-da-da-da. So then we just get all of these messages come back, oh, thank you, Uncle, yes, we agree with you. So even though we're spread all over the world and we're not back in our traditional lands, our elders have realised that there is that social media, and they are still supporting us through social media and making the decisions that they would make if we were at home. Yeah.
And
so,
this, incorporating modern technology in with tradition to maintain it, and that's an important thing. Yes.
Yep. See how clever we are? We can adapt.
Yeah.
And we adapt well.
Yeah.
We call that on Little Island, we call it Indianuity.
Indianuity. Oh, ka pai, mashu. Yeah. So, there's lots of ways, and our young people use these ways. And if we want to bring them back to, or not back to, but reintegrate them with traditions and things again, because we do have to modernise, there's no two ways about that. Mm-hmm. You utilise the tools that you have, and it's wonderful. It's great, We're not actually physically together, but our uncles and our aunties are still making decisions for us, albeit over the net. But when they say jump, we say how high.
And I think that's important for us to be able to do that to move forward with the world. But I also think that we also need the other end of the spectrum, where we do have our communal and tribal basis to do things, traditionally, and those two can link and work together. It just gives us a wider area to carry that on.
Yeah, exactly. So you still have your powwow, like we have our kapahaka, our reunions and all of that. So that's where you do your physical getting together. Mm-hmm. But, when you do have to go back and live in this modern world and work in other cities and whatnot to make a living and get on, you're still connected.
Mashu, you actually do it really well, especially when you visit here, because your appearance, how you talk, how you behave,
absolutely,
everything is Tsalagi, is Cherokee. That's, you promote it in everything you do, and you do that really well over here. And I think it's when we look at you, when some of our Māori, especially our youth, look at you, they see that you stand tall with your people, your culture, your ways, your traditions, and that's just an inspiration for others.
Yeah.
Well, that's because that's who I am, and I don't see, I don't see why our people today, like me, I dress traditional every day. That is who I am. This is the true Indigenous American dress for our people. I mean, I wear modern shoes and modern pants, but from the waist up, I'm always traditional. Unless I'm in something like ceremony or a gathering or a powwow, then I'm 100% traditional as far as attire. But my feeling is I can survive as an Indigenous American in today's world and accomplish any goals I set for myself. That doesn't mean I have to give up being Indigenous. And this is my tribal identity. And you see people from all parts of the world that are doctors, professors, are the highest positions ever, and they still wear their traditional clothing. That tells people who we are. That's our identity. And I think it's important that we do that and that we keep that up, I think that's very important for us, cultural pride and individual pride.
But you've married, what you've done, which is what we were talking about, you've married this world and the world of old. You've married it together so that it actually fits in today's world.
Yeah. And it's proof that we can do it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a scary thing. We can do it, and we just need to, like you do, Mashu, stand very proud in our singular world, which branches the two worlds.
Yeah.
You know, I was talking about Chicago before when my late wife and I had moved to Chicago years ago. We had a population of about 27,000, and we always dressed traditional, like the way you've always seen me dress. And my wife always wore the old traditional dress that went to the ground and did the ribbon work and all of that. And we found within about 3 months after moving into Chicago, more and more Indigenous people were starting to dress traditional.
Awesome. Osmosis. Wonderful.
That's right. You're a trendsetter.
I thought that was just awesome, you know, and we noticed that people started taking more pride. And it's nothing that we set out to do on purpose. We were being ourselves, but I think it triggered something in other people. And this is good, you know. Always be proud of who you are and where you're coming from, and that in no way inhibits you from being the person you can be, you know, and what you can accomplish. And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to show people, even in our beginnings here with Two Feathers International Consultancy, you know, as part of the decolonization. I think we're showing with this program the same thing. You know, we can use like just us being proud of who we are, and this is what we want to instill into people, and where they fit in to their culture at every level, so they can be the most of who they are. And I think
our young people here, our rangatahi, saw that with you when they got to meet you, talk with you, and that I guess is the essence of what we're trying to do as tribes helping tribes, learning from each other.
Yeah, we want to normalise it, don't we? We want to normalise the fact that, you know, you walking around in traditional dress is normal. It's not, oh my goodness, what's that person wearing? Who is he? You know, it becomes part of normal society, and it is part of you. So that's our task. One of our tasks, I suppose, is to normalise that, not make it that there's a difference. It's like, no, this is how it is, and this is how it should be.
Yeah, you know, and the thing is, it's being done for the right reasons. It's, you know, I've dressed like this most of my life, and it's not, and I don't do it to say, hey, look at me. It's nothing like that at all. It's this is who I am, you know, and it's done. I mean, I'm not doing it to flaunt or anything. It's just who I am, and I even dress this way in my 45-year medical work, you know, in the hospital every day, and I was surprised at the number of non-Indigenous people that would come up to me and say, we are so proud of you for being proud of who you are. And they knew nothing about my country. You know? Yeah. Now, good on you, Mashu. I would wear my traditional dress, but it gets a bit drafty. I think it would be rather difficult in the winter time, but you know, your ancestors did survive, Carl, so any excuse you come up with is kind of lame. I think they hibernate. Those are bears, Carl, and you don't have bears in Aotearoa, okay? No, that's good. No, it'd be wonderful when we get to the UN, Mashu, because 90% of the Indigenous people that attend are in traditional dress, and it's just absolutely amazing to see the wonderful... Do you know what would be great when we're there, Carl? If we could get a panel of I don't know how many Indigenous people in one room at one time for one of our radio programs to actually I think that would be the fastest 2 hours ever spent on our radio program.
I'm quite sure that can be done. I'm absolutely sure that can be done. You'll get to a point where you'll have to say to people, sorry, we can't fit you in. Yeah, I'm positive that'll happen, Mashu. Because this is just
wonderful. Because I remember the one show that we did for Two Dogs and Tracy, where we had like 5 or 6 different elders when we were over by Juani Snowden.
Yeah.
And we had like 6 different iwis represented, the elders, and that was a very very good show, wasn't it? Cuz
lots of elders, fantastic. I looked at that one, lots of laughter.
And yes, it was. Matter of fact.
What was
I
that,
loved it.
Yeah, I think that was one of the best shows.
I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, that was.
I actually wanted to say to Doreen and Carl over there is in my heart, I have Newfound now. You know.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you, Two Dogs. That's so true. That's why these sorts of
well, Two Dogs, I don't want to tell you this, but you've gone and done it now because they're coming back with me for a week and we're heading to your place.
That'd be just fine with me.
I know, but I just
That'd be just fine with me.
I'm telling you in advance, you've got till the 24th of May, and then we're coming back here to Missouri, and then we're heading to Kentucky, and I'm giving you this much notice so you can have the venison, the buffalo, the elk, and the bear for us, and prepare for the fry bread, and so we can show them real traditional welcoming, and which means you.
No, you don't.
Which means you
well,
go
I got hawks.
Say what?
I got hawks, eagles, and deer, and everything else roaming around out here. So
I'm talking about
that'll be something interesting for them to see as well.
Oh.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Well, my birthday's on the 24th of May, so that will be nice.
Well, we won't be there on the 24th. We still have to travel from here. We're just landing here in Missouri on the 24th, so we'll be 2 or 3 days out. But they have a week here, and we have to get them back to New York in that week too. So we'll come out for a day or so to visit, and then
okay, that'd be fine.
Their plane. They have to catch their hot people.
And we're going to catch up with Chimmy too.
Well, Chimmy should be here on the 24th. He has a job, but he's going into business for himself, and I really think that it's time for him to take a few days off.
Yeah.
Because we're close to where he is. We're about 4.5 hours from each other, and I think it's important that we'll kidnap him. I mean, we'll invite him to come along. Either with or without
Jimmy on your
Cool. Right.
He's probably now in the back here, rolling his eyes, saying, "Oh my God, what has Mashu gotten me into now?"
It's okay, Mashu. He's a Bennett. He can handle whatever comes his way.
Oh.
Sorry, I walked into the restroom for a minute.
Oh.
It's okay, I had you back.
You are telling a story. You are telling a story.
Hey guys, we got 10 minutes left, so.
But I'm proud of you all. I truly am.
Thank you, Two Dogs. We're proud of you too.
Very happy to be a part of the show.
Yep. It takes us all to make it, and so far I think we're doing pretty good.
I think so too.
How are you feeling, Mashu, in terms of going to the UN for the first time? I'm just so exciting
because I've never been to New York. I'm looking forward to that. I've been around the world, but I've never been to New York. I've been north of it in Canada, but this is the first time for me to go there. I do have Indigenous friends living in New York and New Jersey that are trying to get me to get in touch with them, and I told them it all depends on the scheduling of what's going on at the UN, and just the fact that we're going to be meeting with Indigenous people from all around the world is so exciting to me, and that we can build new relationships, and hopefully, and especially through Two Feathers, be able to help each other. That's what I'm looking at, because one of our main things throughout this whole thing, as Doreen has pointed out several times, is that it's tribes helping tribes. And I think that's very important, and especially in the teaching of stuff. And I think it's important that we do that, because I really think that's the only way we're going to get anything accomplished in this world today.
Yep. And I agree, Mashu. We do have to support each other, as you say, and I think Two Feathers International Consultancy is an amazing tool, an amazing vessel to use, and I actually believe that the time is right. Like we say here in Māori, Mātiwa, when the time is right, it will happen. Mātiwa, Atiwa, yes. And I believe that that the time is right for Two Feathers International, because I think that it has it's going to just fly, absolutely fly, because I think it's something that Indigenous people are looking for, and it will be a venue to pull people together, to support each other, to do all of those things that you endure and envisage, and more, I think. Yeah.
The thing too, I think coming out of this is where, with the contacts that we make there, and I'm sure we're all going to be leaving with new friends, is that we can start doing things on our own together, and maybe have our own intertribal meetings from different places from around the world, to do things that maybe come up with even greater ideas and things to present to the UN next year. Because I see this as a never-ending process, and it can only grow and get better depending on the people who participate.
Absolutely. That's right. That's absolutely right. And I believe that because Two Feathers consultancy, international consultancy, started right, and there's been a lot of groundwork put into it, that it is the right vessel, it is the right venue for the to happen, because you did everything right. I mean, it's got a huge whakapapa history to it, and every decision that's been made around it has been made with cultural eyes, with Indigenous eyes on it, and that can only be good, and that can only be right. And when you do things, I personally believe if you do things from tika pono aroha, from a cultural perspective, and making sure that you've ticked all the boxes around cultural identity, the goodness and all of that sort of stuff, it can only be right.
If you do things with the right reasoning behind it, and with good intention, it cannot go wrong. You may have hurt, but that will also be overcome. That's the way I look at it anyway.
Yep. I totally 100% agree.
I'm looking forward to the day, Mashu, when at the moment it's us fronting and leading and doing all of this stuff, but it'll get to a point where we can actually support and nurture others through. Because it's not just there for everyone.
Oh, absolutely.
And if we are going to be a vessel for that, then I'm looking forward to the day when we can do that, nurture and support others, and push them forward to make a difference.
That's the goal for us, and then that responsibility will then pass on, and then we'll have other people that will be supporting and helping. And we're hoping that it's something that will be a never-ending source of intertribal support around the world.
Absolutely. It's just amazing. It's an amazing kaupapa. Yep, 5 minutes.
Okay.
Well, I think that we should probably, according to my clock, we've got about 4 minutes left. And
Yes.
I'd like to start having people give their last thoughts for the day. And I guess ladies first. We'll start with you, Doreen.
Thank you. He mihi aroha kia koutou katoa. Thank you all who have been listening tonight, today our time. And ka nui te mihi ki a koe, Carl, and a huge thank you to Carl. I know, I actually booked him in and then I forgot to remind him until last night. Because a 2-hour time frame is a lot of time, but thank you, Carl, for coming on the show today and sharing your knowledge, your experiences, and a little bit of your story with everyone listening, with all of us here and everyone listening. And Two Dog, thank you for being a support for us on our Indigenous Peoples Voice radio. It's always nice to hear you and to know that you're here for us. And also to Chimmy and Sheila, thank you. Tēnā kōrua. Thank you both, for making sure we sound good and nothing goes wrong, because Master and I can mix things up when we're in that frame of mind. And my parting words, I'll be quick, Master. I thought I heard us talking about rangatahi, about you. So I wanted to just share, let us never forget the teachings of our elders, our ancestors. Pass on the knowledge to our rangatahi, to our youth, so that we can ensure a better future. Kia ora koutou katoa.
Kapa. Carl?
Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou katoa. Ngā mihi nui ki a kōrua, Mashu and Doreen. So thank you all both very much for inviting me onto the radio station. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honour. Acknowledgements to Jimmy and Two Dogs, and also to Sheila. Thank you to you guys, and thank you to the listeners. I hope the listeners got something out of it. Like I said, it's been a pleasure and an honour, and loved it all very much. My parting one will be, I'll say it in English. One of our wakatoki, it's one of our proverbs, is with my food basket and your food basket, we will feed the people. Kia ora.
Papai, kia ora. Two Dogs, my cousin, do you have anything that you would like to add? Two Dogs.
Well, one of the things is I'm really proud of you all. I'm right here. One thing is that I'm very proud of you all. And may all this come to pass to what you're fixing to do. And my heart is with you all. And may we all have unification of all the people to do what we got to do. Love, honor, and respect.
Okay.
Very good. Chimmy, would you like to add anything?
Well, I'd like to add I'm very honored to be a part of the show. And sanolio stai ale dona daga ahi pomari kakitiano.
Kaupai. I'd like to say I think we have some very big goals that we are trying to meet and to do for not just our own respective tribes, but for all Indigenous people, which will in turn will affect all peoples around the world. And it's done with a good thought and a good prayer, and it's being done for good reasons. And so I'm hoping that everything that we're working for does come to fruition in a good way. And I would like to say, Sonoyo Sta, Eli Dona Dagahai, Gukeyui, Oganali, Eli, Nikida. Thank you. Good. And
Sonoyo Sta.
Sonoyosta.